Okay, this will be a 200 Q&A with lots of names. Here we go. Would you state your name for us? It's Officer Terrence Cooley. Terrence, are you also referred to as TC Cooley? Yes, sir. Okay. And where are you employed? Prentice Police Department and Bassfield Police Department part-time. Okay, so now you work at Prentice and Bassfield? Yes, sir. On December 26, 2001, where were you employed? Bassfield Police Department. Okay, at that time, did you work for Prentice? No, sir. Just Bassfield? Yes, sir. Did you go to Prentice on that day or that night? Yes, sir. Why did you go there? Officer Earl Bullock, Chief of Police at Bassfield, advised that Prentice was needing some assistance in serving some warrants. Some warrants? Yes, sir. What kind of warrants was it? It was 2 search warrants to enter some premises searching for some narcotics. Okay, so it was search warrants? Yes, sir. It wasn't arrest warrants. It was search warrants. Search warrants, okay. And Earl Bullock, that's your chief? Yes, sir. And he's the one that first told you that Prentice needed some help? Yes, sir. Okay, and then what did you do? I went to Bassfield Police Department. I was on duty that evening, and I just met up with Chief Bullock there at the police department, and we rode up to Prentice together. Okay, now when you got to Prentice, what did you go? We went to the Prentice Police Department. Okay, now when you got to the Prentice Police Department, what happened? We met with Officer Ron Jones, Daryl Graves, Mike Brown, several other officers, Stephen Jones, and discussed the layout of the houses and everything for the duplex that they were wanting to do the search warrant on. And you said you had 2 search warrants? Yes, sir. Was it for both sides of the duplex? Yes, sir. Okay. And who was in charge of this operation? Officer Ron Jones. And who was Ron Jones? He was a Prentice police officer. He did their search warrants on drugs and stuff, and he was their canine unit. Okay, so Ron Jones was a Prentice police officer who did their search warrants for drugs and canine unit. What's a canine unit? The kennel. He had a canine dog. A dog? Yes, sir. And what was the purpose of the dog? Search, just to help search vehicles and stuff like that at the time. For what? For narcotics. For narcotics. Okay. So Ron Jones was the officer in Prentice who did the search warrants, search for drugs, had the drug dog. Yes, sir. He called you all to assist on some search warrants. Yes, sir. When you got to the police department in Prentice, you said you went over the layout of the duplex. Yes, sir. And who did that with you? Officer Daryl Graves and Ron Jones. Okay. And did you all divide up into 2 teams? Yes, sir. And what was the purpose of dividing up into 2 teams? Because it was a duplex. There was 2 separate families living at this duplex. Okay. What's a duplex? It's 2 small apartments put in one. It's one building with 2 apartments? Yes, sir. Okay. And after you all divided up in teams, did you talk about who was going into which side? Yes, sir. Okay, you broke up into teams. You talked about who was going to go into each side. And then what did y'all do? At that time, we decided who was going to go where. We went to the vehicles and we proceeded to the residence. Okay, and I want to show you what's been marked Exhibit 5 and ask if you can identify that. That's the front door of the apartments, one side of the duplex. Okay, and which side of the duplex did you go in initially? Initially, I was supposed to be at the left side apartment on the back door. Okay, let me see if I can get one of the, this is the front. You recognize that? Yes, sir. Okay, now, when you say you were initially going to go to the left side, you're referring to this side over here? Yes, sir. Okay, and who was in charge of that team? Daryl Graves. Okay, and who was in charge of the team on the right side over here? Ron Jones. When you got there, what did you do? We pulled up. I was riding with Daryl Graves and Mike Brown. And when we got out of the car, I made it around to the back of the house before Officer Philip Alday had made it back there. And he came around the same way I did. So I went on over to the next apartment door and was watching the back door. And he stood at the first apartment door. Okay, so at that time, you would have been on which side of the apartments? I'd have been on the right side of the apartment. The right side, that's this one over here that Ron Jones was in charge of. Yes, sir. Okay. And where were you at these apartments? I was standing just to the right side of the steps there. Okay. This is the steps. So the right side would be over here. Yes, sir. Okay. And what was the purpose of going to the duplex? We had two search warrants to try and locate some narcotics that was supposed to have been there. Okay. When you were standing at those back steps, who was at the front steps? Officer Daryl Cooley, Officer Stephen Jones, and Officer Ron Jones. Did you hear anything when you were at the back steps? I could hear them hollering from the front saying, "Police, we have a search warrant." Okay, and do you know who was hollering that? No, sir. I don't know which officer was saying that. Do you know how many times, or how many times did you hear that? About 3 times. Okay. Did you hear anything else? At that time, it got quiet for a few minutes, and Officer Ron Jones and Stephen Jones came around to the back of the house and said that they couldn't get the front door open and were going to try to do the back door. Okay, and what happened then? Officer Ron Jones looked at the steps, and with his height, he was afraid if he tried to kick the door, it might knock him back down the steps. And Officer Ron Jones and Stephen Jones had started back around to the front, and Philip Alday said, "I'll kick it." And he came up the steps and kicked the door. It broke free, but it didn't come completely open. Okay, what happened then? I told Officer Ron Jones that we had it broke open, and Ron started back around where we were at, and Philip kicked the door again. And just as he kicked the door, it came open, and Officer Ron Jones was going into the house. "Police, we," and then the shots started ringing off from inside the house. You said Ron was going in the house, and he did what? He started "Police, we have a," and he never finished it from there. He went to trying to find cover, I guess. Okay. Why didn't he finish it? The shots started going off from inside the home. Okay. And then what happened? Officer Stephen Jones came back out the door. Officer Ron Jones turned and he told me, he said, "TC, I'm hit." I told him, "Ron, get out of the door." Ron came down the steps, came out in like a circle, and came back around to the other side of the house. You're pointing. You're pointing, coming down these steps and go around this side of the house like that? Yes, sir. Come back around to this side of the house. Okay, then what happened? The door had come back to, and I was hollering into the house to "Throw the weapon, throw the weapon." And I was pushing the door open, trying to find where the suspect was laying or standing or whatever. And he said, "I ain't got it. I ain't got it." And I pushed the door open, and I got my light to where I could see the suspect laying on the floor close to the wall at the foot of the bed. Okay. I told him, "Show me your hands." And he had his hands, he brung his hands out in front of him, laying on the floor. And I pushed the door open a little further, keeping my weapon on the suspect, pushing the door open with my light. And I seen where the weapon was laying, approximately 8 to 10 feet away from him. Okay. What did you do next? Then I entered the house and I went over there and got between Corey and the bed, and I put my knee on his back. And at that time, Officer Stephen Jones had re-entered the house. He did a brief check of the house, and then he came back over there where I was at, and then went back toward the door. Officer Earl Bullock came in the house. Officer Bullock did a thorough check of the house, making sure nobody else was in there. I was trying to get Corey to give me his hands, get them behind his back. Officer Bullock came over and put a knee, I want to say it was on Corey's left shoulder, right in the neck area, and helped me get his hands around behind his back and get him handcuffed. Now, were you able to handcuff Corey by yourself? No, sir. Officer Bullock had to give me some assistance. Why were you not able to handcuff him by yourself? We were in a confined area, and we was struggling trying to get his hands to come back behind his back. He pulled back on us sometimes. Was he resisting? Yes, sir. And when Officer Bullock came, were you able to, both of you, handcuff him? Yes, sir. Then what did you do? Officer Bullock got the baby off the bed. Officer Alan Alday came in. Officer Bullock said, "Y'all get him out of here." And who was he referring to? Referring to Corey May. Okay, do you see Corey May in the courtroom? Yes, sir. Would you point him out for the court? Yes, sir. Then what did you do? Me and Officer Alan Alday took him out to the car, put him in the car. Then I went back and helped Earl get the scene and all situated until we could get the investigators there on the scene. Okay, when you say situated, get some tape put up to keep other people from coming on into the crime scene area. Is that what's commonly referred to as securing the scene? Yes, sir. After you secured the scene, what did you do? I rode with Officer Alan Alday to the sheriff's department with Corey May, and we got him secured at the jail. And then I came back to the scene. Well, we rode by the hospital, and then we came back to the scene. And I went to the house next door to the left of Corey May's apartment there from the back side on the other side of the fence and stood there with Officer Bullock while Officer Bullock secured the scene. Okay, now who came to investigate? CIB. Okay, CIB with the Highway Patrol. Yes, sir. When you were at the back door, can you see this picture over here? Yes, sir. And the back door steps right there? Yes, sir. When you were going in there, you said you saw Corey behind the bed? Yes, sir. He was laying on the floor at the foot of the bed there. Here? Yes, sir. Right there by that first closet door there. Right in there? Yes, sir. Okay. And was anything obstructing your view from the door to where Corey was? The bed had him partially obstructed. All I could really see was from about his armpits up to where he had his arms laying out in front of him. Okay, so you could see he had his arms laying out here. Yes, sir. Past the bed. Yes, sir. You could see that. Okay. And where were you at when you cuffed him? He was still laying. He was still right there. Still right there? Yes, sir. And I was right there in between the bed and him, about midways to him with my knee on his back. Okay. How many shots did you hear? I heard 3 to 4 shots. And before those shots, did anybody announce police? Yes, sir. And was that loud? Well, I was at the back door and heard them at the front door saying police. And then when Ron was going through the back door, he said it again. Okay, how many times did you hear them announce police at that apartment before they went in? At that apartment, about 4 times at least. And some of those you were on the back of the apartment and they were at the front of the apartment? Yes, sir.